Have you ever said, I don't want to know? Are there some health metrics you're purposefully avoiding because you don't want to know what they have to say? While we often convince ourselves that it's scary, knowing the truth actually allows you to relax and expand your life in ways you never thought possible. Avoiding it keeps you stuck. You're listening to the Health Courage Collective podcast, episode 227. What do you not want to know? Welcome to the Health Courage Collective podcast, the show for women who are too busy to slog through hours of generalized, inapplicable, and often contradictory health information, but too smart to ignore that a few minutes of focused attention now can prevent years of suffering in the future. I'm your host, Christina Hackett, a pharmacist who doesn't want you to live on prescriptions, a certified coach specifically trained to maximize your potential, and a compulsive learner obsessed with preventative, cutting-edge, holistic, and integrative medicine. I'm on a mission to increase your physical and mental resilience so you can fearlessly look forward to your next 40-plus limitless years. Your time is now. Let's go. Hello, my friend, and welcome to another episode. I'm so happy that you're here today. I hope you've had a great week. Have you been thinking like a scientist this past week? Good, because we're going to continue that theme a little bit this week. Scientists need data. But what if you don't want to know? Is there something that you think you don't want to know about your health? I'm sure you've heard people say many times that ignorance is bliss. Maybe you've been the one to say it. What do you think about this concept? It's complicated, right? I do think there are times when ignorance can be bliss, times when you have no earthly idea about some event or circumstance, so you don't have the opportunity to have any thoughts about it that would generate discontent. But in that case, you could just as easily have an ignorance is misery scenario if you had no idea about a circumstance that you would think positively about, right? But what about not wanting to know? Is ignorance bliss then? It's a little different when there's not a genuine, total unawareness about the possibilities. I don't want to know infirms a knowledge of the existence or possible existence of a certain circumstance. This is an attitude I hear all the time, and I can relate to it in a lot of ways. I definitely have thought it myself before, barring all the theoretical, philosophical debates like, if you could find out the day of your death, would you want to know, kind of things. If there was something you really could know, why might you resist? What I hear from people quite frequently is that they should measure this or check that or get a certain workup or evaluation, but that they don't want to know the results. Why not? Obviously, it's not physically painful to step on a scale, lie down for a DEXA scan. Actually, that's kind of relaxing. I just did my yearly scan last month. Or get handed a lab report. So the pain is clearly created by us and what we're making those results mean. Does your reported body fat percentage mean that you are a morally corrupt person? Does knowing the number of calories or grams of carbs you eat a day versus what would be optimal for your body mean that you'll never be able to eat anything delicious again? Does your blood sugar level mean you are on an inevitable path toward an early grave? Obviously not. We know logically that none of these things are true, yet still we resist. I think there's an underlying fear of not being good or good enough, and more so a fear that either things are going to change or that we're going to need to change, and maybe we're not up for the challenge. We either don't have the confidence in our ability to step up and do what needs to be done to create the results we want, or we think we'll, quote, have to do something, and that it will be necessary for that effort to be extremely unpleasant. We think we're happier not having to face a challenge. But I think that fear continues to be there as long as we stay in avoidance. The more we put it off, the more mental real estate it begins to occupy, not less. You don't live your best life in hiding, that's for sure. The only way to set ourselves free from the fear is to willingly step into it. And despite how that sounds, it doesn't have to be awful. You can do it, and with some practice, it will become something you genuinely look forward to. For real. First of all, since you don't know, maybe the results will be, quote, better than you expected. This is all relative after all, and any drama about it is created by us inside of our own minds. But even if the results confirm your pessimistic beliefs or are even worse than you imagined they would be, you can handle it because you're stronger and more resilient than you give yourself credit for, and because the truth allows you to expand your life in ways that you never thought possible. Knowing whatever you thought you didn't want to know will be okay. Even a good thing. Good scientists make sound, non-emotional decisions about how to move forward based on data. They don't shame their lab rats or petri dishes or whatever for not giving them the data that they wanted to see. They simply observe that something in the current system is not producing the results they're trying to create, and they get curious about what they could tweak to get different results. When you're dealing with your long-term health, the truth might sting at first, but that's a good thing because knowing the truth helps you see who you are right now compared to who you wish you were. Knowing that is the first step to becoming who you wish you were. Staying stuck in not wanting to know the truth prevents you from closing the gap from who you are now to who you aspire to be. You can love yourself exactly the way you are and still strive to change. Not because you aren't good enough now, but because you envision something more for yourself and your ability to contribute to the world. I love the metaphor I once heard that in order for your GPS to guide you to where you want to go, the first thing it needs to know is where you are right now. It's an essential data point in the algorithm. Your GPS doesn't have any judgment about your starting location. It doesn't say, okay, you want to go to San Francisco. Wait, you're starting in St. Louis? You're stupid. This is hopeless. There's no way. Don't you know it would be way easier to get to San Francisco from Reno? No, it's just, you want to go there? Okay, here's how to get there from where you are now. Sure, it might take a little longer, but there's no shame in starting in St. Louis, and there will be more interesting scenery and experiences to enjoy along the way. Plus, life isn't any better in San Francisco. There are still pros and cons. They're just different than the ones in St. Louis. If you really want to know where you are now and whether you're getting closer or farther away from where you want to be over time, you need that data. The more data you gather, the more frequently it's received, and the more immediately it arrives related to the behavior associated with it, the more useful it will be to you. There's this school called the Second City Comedy Academy that proves this to be true. Graduates of the Second City Comedy Academy include the extraordinary comedians Stephen Colbert, Dan Aykroyd, Tina Fey, Seth Meyers, and Steve Carell. The reasons graduates of the Second City are so wildly successful is because the Second City teaches its students to take both failures and successes in stride and to become scientists who see audience reaction as commentary on the joke, not the joker. They learn to turn off the part of their brains that says, I am good, when they get a laugh, or I failed when they get negative feedback. With this process, the Second City transforms failure, something that implies finality, into simply feedback, something that can be used to improve. They do this hundreds of times a week. They are trained on how to fail fast and fail often and how to perceive the feedback as simply data without taking it personally. If they can learn to do that with getting up on stage and performing in front of thousands of people who might heckle or boo them, we can learn to do it with tracking some of our personal health metrics. You really can handle more than you think and learn to enjoy the process of scientific discovery using feedback. Feedback that's neutral unless we allow our brains to categorize it as good or bad. Whether you have something you already know you should check on, but you've been avoiding it, or you just know that you should be more intentional about your health, but you don't even know where to start, I would invite you to take a minute to really think through who you want to be. When you're lying on your deathbed someday, what will make you proud of the way you lived your life? Will you be pleased with the way you were always there for your family? Will you be happy you were able to travel abroad to serve the less fortunate? Will you treasure the times you were able to hike and camp with your teenage grandkids and influence their lives in a way that only a grandparent can? Will you hold dear the things you learned and people you met while traveling around the world as a student of humanity? Whatever your big dream is, what might hold you back from getting there? Are there health conditions you are predisposed to that run in your family? Have you had to watch your parents or aunts or uncles give up on something of their dreams because of pain or lack of energy or having to spend all their time or money on medical treatments? Or are there health challenges that have already begun their early stages in your life? That could be a good place to start. Okay, so I'm hoping you're starting to realize that you do want to know. You do. You're ready to put on your scientist lab coat, analyze the data, and use it to close the gap between who you are now and who you want to be. Start small, but with something that's meaningful to you. There are all kinds of things that I think could be beneficial for you to know. Never get overwhelmed. Just think about what might be a useful place for you to start. I think it's beneficial to know your bone density now because osteoporosis can be completely staved off by being proactive. It's good to know your total lean mass. How much muscle do you have for strength, endurance, and to keep your metabolism revved up? It's good to know your body fat percentage. A lot can be predicted based on your body fat to lean mass ratio. While there are some major flaws in the whole calories in, calories out model, I think it's still good to know your resting metabolic rate. How many calories do you need to consume today to maintain your current body? You should know how many grams of protein you eat every day. That has long-term effects. You should know your blood pressure. Cancer screenings can be a bit of a murky area to discuss, but certainly finding any cancer early is way better than finding it late, so it's something to consider. Especially as we get older, or if we are having certain symptoms, it's hugely beneficial to know all of your hormone levels. Estrogens, there are more than one, progesterone, testosterone, cortisol, different thyroid levels, there are multiple levels to check there, DHEA, melatonin, etc. It's also good to know your vitamin D level and your CRP, which is a marker for inflammation. It would be so fantastic if we could easily all measure our insulin levels because that drives so much of what's going to happen to us in the future. But for now, that's a little hard to do just because you have to go to the doctor. But measuring your blood glucose or your A1C is a good surrogate. It's good to check some liver enzymes and your triglyceride levels, which can be indicative of impending health problems. There are tons of useful lab tests. Send me a message if you want me to talk more about those. I think we could come up with a really good plan of like, hey, over the next few years, here's some lab things to check and see if you're going to live a long time or not. But most of them are not the tests your doctor typically runs at a normal checkup, so it's good to have your own game plan. Okay, I'm having a really hard time reining myself in, but I'm forcing myself to stop here. It's really hard, but we'll come back to it another day. What about NEAT? Have you heard of that acronym? Non-exercise activity thermogenesis? How much do you move around during the regular course of your day? It's good to know, and it could be surprising. We know that sitting is the new smoking, so getting a sense of where we are now really can help us make a few little changes today that will prevent us from becoming a statistic in the future. How well we sleep determines a whole host of things, including how quickly we deteriorate, literally. So having sleep metrics to evaluate can be helpful. I've been scrutinizing mine recently, and I've been a little surprised actually, so that's something to work on. Good to know. Of course, doing a good old scientific evaluation of what you eat will provide a lot of good data you can use to optimize, and your long-term health will be drastically affected by what you choose to eat. There's so many fun things to measure. I'm sure you've heard of some that I haven't thought to include, like, did you know that one of the best predictors for old age disability is your midlife grip strength? It's true, and you can measure it. There are all kinds of things. Don't get overwhelmed with them. Just pick one that you've been avoiding and see how it might make your life better if you lean into it. Have you heard of lead measures and lag measures before? Lag measures are the measurements of the goal that you're trying to achieve. If you have a goal to not have a stroke, your lag measure might be to maintain your blood pressure at 118/78. But the lag measure is the result of doing things right. The lead measure is what foretells your result. Lead measures are predictive, meaning that the lead measure changes. You can predict that the lag measure will also change. Lead measures are also influenceable. They can be directly influenced by you and what you choose to do. Your lead measures could be taking magnesium every day, exercising 4 times a week, and the amount of processed food you eat, for example. If you focus on your lead measures, you're likely to achieve your lag measure. If you put all of your effort into just your lag measure only, like obsessively checking your blood pressure all the time, you're actually a lot less likely to achieve your goal. So the question is, what are you now willing and excited to find out in the name of taking the first step on your path from who you are now to who you aspire to be? What might your lead measures be for that lag measure? Are you starting to think of ways that you can stay objective and curious about the data rather than getting emotional or critical? How might you make data collection more enjoyable? Could you make it part of something you already enjoy doing? What if you got a buddy and competed with each other? Not about the results, but about collecting the data. Could you gamify collecting the data somehow? As part of my Optimized Coach training, we had to do certain things every day in order to certify at the end. One of those things was to keep a scorecard, which when I first heard that, I was not overly thrilled, but I trusted the program and was willing to give it a try. There were 25 things picked by me on my scorecard that I scored myself on every day, and it was not hard at all. When our coach explained how to track, he was like, you can even circle scores when you get a birdie, double circle for an eagle, or put a box if you get a bogey. I've never golfed before in my life, so that doesn't even fully make sense to me. I didn't do any golf markings, but I really loved the scorecard. Way more than I thought I would. It doesn't take long at all to fill out. Some things I made yes or no, some things are subjective on a scale of 1 to 10, and some are hard numbers. To me, the scorecard is a fun and compelling way to know at a glance whether I'm on track or not. Like a little dashboard that tells me whether I'm headed toward my destination or not. My thoughts about keeping track have never made me feel bad about myself, even if I'm, bogey? Double bogey? I don't really know. It all serves to provide data all in one place to be able to discover patterns and make connections between how one metric influences another, which is kind of cool. Like, okay, I see that the days that my focus is lower are the days that I meditated for fewer minutes or not at all. Now, lest you think keeping track of data isn't fun, imagine you went out for a great night of bowling with your friends. Is that a great night anymore? I still think it's fun. Anyway, but then you found out that you're all going to just bowl into a curtain. So none of you will ever know how you did. No score. Not so fun, right? Now imagine Venus and Serena Williams playing tennis. In one scenario, they're just hitting the ball back and forth. In the other, they're keeping score. Which one do you think generates a higher level of intensity? Even if the score isn't ever going to be publicized anywhere, the act of keeping score dials up your intensity. I found that to be true with my little scorecard, even with silly little stuff like when I'm frustrated and stuck in traffic and realize that if I leave a gap and wave someone in, then I can mark yes on act of kindness for the day. One of the things I started 6 years ago or so now that really helped me see how data can set me on a better course was to get a DEXA scan. I wasn't sure I wanted to know the results. I was actually really scared to find out my body fat percentage, but I'm so glad I did it. It kind of changed everything for me. A quick and easy DEXA scan gives you a very detailed and highly accurate report of your bone density, lean muscle mass, and body fat. It breaks it all down by body region and per limb, and it tells you about visceral fat, which is critically important. It's pretty cool. You do get about 4 microsieverts of radiation from it, so keep that in mind. It's equal to about half of the radiation you're exposed to by walking around on the earth for one day. A chest x-ray is 100 microsieverts. DEXA scan is 4. This might not be where you want to start, but it's an option that gives you some fabulous data to evaluate and make some determinations about whether your current protocols are serving your long-term vision for your life or not. There was a study done 15 years ago where a Harvard Business School professor named Teresa Amabile asked 238 white-collar employees to give daily work diaries answering open-ended questions about how they felt and what events stood out to them for the day. She dissected 12,000 diary entries, searching for what it is that causes a positive relationship to work and life. The answer turned out to be, drumroll, progress. Any data that shows a sense of forward motion, regardless of how small, is what stood out. minor victories were nearly as psychologically powerful as major breakthroughs. So, as you're thinking through your lead measures or the data you want to gather on your journey to your optimized self, maybe consider how you might be able to detect progress regularly. Progress is hugely motivating. A tiny drop in visceral fat is a big deal. A small decrease in your average blood sugar is a really big deal for your long-term health. Showing up to meditate 6 days a week instead of 3 changes your ability to focus. But you only know you're making progress if you're regularly measuring something. Data is your friend. Knowing what it's telling you is what allows you to close the gap between who you are and who you want to be. Thank you so much for being here today. I hope you're inspired to go out there and find out what you thought you didn't want to know, to discover the truth and to lovingly and kindly use it to make progress toward the healthiest you, who's ready to go out and change the world for many years to come. Next week, we're going to talk about testosterone replacement for women. Until then, collect all the data you think you're scared of and don't be normal. Thank you so much for tuning into the Health Courage Collective podcast. I am truly honored that you have paid me the enormous compliment of your time and attention. I would be so grateful if you would share this podcast with someone you know and subscribe so you never miss an episode. This podcast is for entertainment and information purposes only. Statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Christina Hackett and producers, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse events by use of information contained herein. If you think you have a medical problem, consult a licensed physician.